The Global Quran, a dynamic comprehension, a human perspective. Chapter 2, The Successors of Imran, Part 3, Attributes negated by the Successors of Imran. The preface of the Quran introduced the types of guides or leaders called the blessed. Their pathways are called the right pathways that guide towards God's preferred systems. The ones on a contrary pathway are misguided and lead to disgrace. Briefing to Chapter 1. Chapter 1, the cow, illustrated some examples of the blessed and the disgraced leaderships from the descendants of Ibrahim or Abraham. The branch stemmed from his son Ishaq or Isaac is termed Bani Israel, and the one stemmed from his son Ismail or Ishmael is termed Bani Hashim. Bani Israel had 3 heavenly scriptures, the Psalms, Torah, and the Bible. It has been warned that these scriptures were distorted after the prophets carrying them were killed or passed away. This caused the transfer of leadership from Bani Israel to Bani Hashim, with the last prophet Mohammad appointed amongst Bani Hashim with an updated scripture, the Quran, means the lesson. Review of Chapter 2, Part 1. It had been discussed in Part 1 that Chapter 1 clearly identifies that God had transferred the leadership of mankind from Bani Israel to Bani Hashim to preserve the right manifestation of the divine rules, with Muhammad nominated as the final prophet. Hence, the succession of the final scripture, the Quran, was meant to be taken over by Muhammad's successors. In this way, the term Al-e-Imran, the family of successors of Imran, in the title of Chapter 2, must refer to the successors of someone named Imran amongst Bani Hashim, with a proven history of protecting Muhammad and his Islamic movement by all means that warrants the reliability to protect and preserve the Quran and its originality. The history of Islam, written by Muslim and non-Muslim scholars, identify Muhammad's uncle and the chief of Bani Hashim, Imran, as the only Imran that qualifies the above roles. Traditionally, the successorship was meant to be taken up by the males. Unfortunately, none of Muhammad's sons survived to take up the role as per tradition. His successorship was carried forward by the family formed by his daughter, Fatima, and his uncle Imran's son, Ali, who was already a dynamic part of Muhammad's movement and was the man of the family after him. Hence, as per tradition, the succession of Muhammad was continued by Ali, who was the son of Imran and the only son-in-law of Muhammad, hence the title. Review of Chapter 2, Part 2. In the second part of this chapter, the Quran connects the successors of Imran, or the successors of Muhammad, to Adam, Nuh, and Ibrahim's successors in verses 33 to 34, who received an elevated status. Historically, the common elements in the above 4 generations seem to be the ability to speak standing out of existing species, ability to speak and leading to escape from orthodoxy, leadership forming the foundation of Abrahamic religions, and leadership protecting Abrahamic religions from distortions for global applicability. Introduction to Part 3. Attributes negated by the successors of Imran. Elevation needs pushing down the lower levels, verses 83 to 200. In this part, this chapter presents features that Al-e-Imran did not possess, rather fought against, to protect the originality of God's message, and attained and elevated as described in verses 33 to 34. Betrayal to the Prophet. This is the foremost aspect of ignorance or negligence of God's message, the major defaulter against the leadership criteria applied to choose high-profile messengers like Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, and the successors Musa and Isa, and finally Muhammad to represent God. It has been asserted that those who possess this feature in any form falsely claim to follow Prophet Muhammad. They are oppressors and deserve condemnation forever. They won't be able to claim any acquittal from accountability, no matter if they offer gold equal to the size of earth to save themselves. Spending works only if it is for a noble cause, regardless of personal preferences. Linking self-made rules to God's commands. The next important feature of such people is that they link their self-made rules to God's commandments. An example is given from Bani Israel. They were permitted to eat everything according to Torah. However, they had made certain rules themselves before Torah was revealed and preferred to stick to those. To satisfy people, they somehow associated their self-made rules to God's commandments in Torah. The Quran asserts that it could be verified from Torah. The Quran states that people who link their self-made traditions to God's rules falsely claim to have studied the books. They have not properly studied them and have no sense of God's instructions. They are misguided and misguide others. The Quran, sacred recitation or sensible study. Follow the Quran sensibly. It has been repeatedly emphasized that people must understand their books and follow them sensibly and truthfully. Dividing into groups. The Quran further advises the true followers to not follow any one blindly. That would divide them and make them astray from the right path. The mission should be to remember the character demonstrated by God's messengers in their successors. This would save them from confusion. This is the only way to live peacefully and develop as a nation. Dependence on others. Dependence is a clear sign of misguidance. It has been asserted that those who act on the contrary will stay disgraced. They will depend on others for every little need of life. Dependence will be enforced on them due to the dismissal of God's instructions and not following their prophets, which is a way of killing them. They will not be able to get any benefits from their money and children. It would be like spending on cold wind that destroys all efforts made for cultivation. Greed for personal benefits. A major key to stay safe from hypocrites has been asserted as avoiding greed for benefits. The Quran guarantees peace for those who spend and earn in the right ways, no matter if they are prosperous or not. Control their anger if they don't get what they want, and ignore the tricks to provoke their greed. An example would be fulfilling personal interests in selecting community leaders. Learning from others. According to the Quran, truthful people realize their mistakes and apologize. They do not insist to justify their faults. They will be rewarded with a peaceful life. People are also advised that the behaviors described above are not unique. They exist everywhere in every space-time. To verify, people are advised to visit different nations and observe how they attained better systems of life. As explained above, dependence on other nations to meet the needs of life would be the biggest evidence of not understanding and following God's message. Difficult times rotate for everyone. Look at others. The Quran explains that good and bad times are there to test people's character and learning from mistakes. Singing for heroes existing centuries ago, making excuses for depending on other nations to meet the needs of a respectful life would be the biggest evidence of misguidance about God's commandments. Real obstacle, hypocrisy and betrayal. Examples of worst hypocrisy, the Battle of Uhud. The worst example of betrayal mentioned in the Quran is given from the Battle of Uhud, where people claiming to be the friends and followers of the Prophet made excuses to run away from the battlefield when called on duty. Hence, the battle was lost. Yet, due to their lack of faith, they blamed God for the loss of lives. They denied their irresponsibility as soldiers of the Prophet. The Quran asserts that such people should not be a part of decision-making without any discrimination of relatives or friends. God should be the only one to trust for support, and that cannot be overthrown by anyone. Key aspects of prophecy. Hypocrites weaken the roots of beliefs by misguiding people about messengers. The Quran advises to remember some key features of messengers that would be absent in a misguided society. Messengers are from among their community. They decipher God's books to make them simpler to understand. They purify the belief system from hypocrisy. They educate people to apply the books sensibly. The misguided. The misguided people, on the other hand, don't like facing accountability and don't believe on what goes around comes around. Always have excuses to not follow the Prophet. In current times, lack of knowledge and excellence among Muslims compared with other nations. Such people are declared closer to negators than to believers. Say what they don't mean. Follow misguided people and consider people following the rules with understandings as fools. Selling the Book of God. Teaching God's books means taking an oath to explain the contents of the books with scholarship. Those who conceal its real vision and values, yet they want to take credit for teaching and learning, which is very common these days, are considered as selling their oaths in the Quran. The Quran says that they deserve extreme chastisements rather than respect and will not be able to escape from God's apprehension. Demonstration by Al-e-Imran. This chapter concludes that, though naturally every living soul is meant to die, however, there are and have been people who suffer and sometimes give their lives to protect the originality of God's system for a stable and developed society. They separate themselves from hypocrites and get hidden support from God. They are tested with life and relationships and succeed. They hear painful comments from both the hypocrites and non-believers, yet they stay determined to their cause with patience and stay away from being disgraced. This verse states that those people should not be considered as dead. They stay alive and receive sustenance.